Welcome back to Simplify, your channel for simple systems to financial independence, offered from the perspective of a simple guy who values steady, sustainable, and mostly predictable approaches to both life and to money. In today's video, we're going to be talking about 3 common killers to wealth. As I go through each of these 3 issues, I want you to be honest with yourself. I'm sure you've heard of each of them in great detail. If you watch content like this, or if you're interested in financial content at all, even if you're not, I'm sure you've heard from friends, family, and others just speaking casually about the concept, about each of these potential issues. As we go through each, again, please be honest with yourself. Take time to do a self-evaluation. How are these concepts interplaying in your life? Are you actually thinking about each of them at the level that you should? Are they impacting you negatively? Have you made sustainable changes that have allowed you to avoid these issues? Be honest with yourself. That's the way we grow, and I think is a very key component to how we can create success in our lives, both financially and otherwise. So without further ado, let's jump into the very first issue. For lack of a better term, I will call this issue procrastination. It's procrastination, but in a very specific sense. When it comes to your finances, a lot of people assume that at some later point in life, they will start to learn what's necessary to manage their finances. They procrastinate the work that needs to be done in order to have some level of financial literacy, to have a basic understanding, and associated with that understanding, to create a plan for growth, a plan for where you want to be when you're ready for retirement, whether that be in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s, or more traditionally in your 60s and beyond. This procrastination is a behavior that you think is just something you're doing now. I'm going to procrastinate and wait until it feels right to learn about money. There might be a series of excuses. One common excuse is, I'm not making enough money right now to do anything about my savings, to do anything about my investments. Well, that's not true. You can always do something, and creating a system, a simple system, whether it be to include 5% or 10% of your income, setting that aside, either saving it into an emergency fund or creating some sort of investment stream, this can be easily done. The system then can grow as your wealth grows, as your income grows, and as your understanding continues to mature and evolve over the years. If you continue to express, then you stand no chance of ever building the proper foundation that's required to really go on to financial success in the future. This is a problem that affects not only younger individuals who are just getting out of school, who are just starting in their first job, but also high income earners. A lot of professionals who are doctors, lawyers, and the like continue to procrastinate their knowledge and understanding of money. They often outsource this piece of their life and trust a financial advisor, which can be an acceptable solution, better than doing nothing, but also can result in substantial losses over years through assets under management, fees, and penalties. So how do we get around this procrastination? Well, my suggestion is to take simple steps, very simple steps, to understanding the basics of money. The basics of money are digestible, easy to read, and can be grasped over the course of a short period of time by just reading 1 or 2 financial books that give you that baseline. One recommendation that I have, a specific book, is by J.L. Collins. It's called A Simple Path to Wealth, and it helps you gain a better understanding of basic principles when it comes to money, investing, and the like. So take action now. Do something that helps you eliminate procrastination in your life. Specifically with regards to money, make a decision. Make any kind of a decision. Open an investment account. Create a simple system to put money into that investment account. It can be a very small amount. And then over time, evaluate your approach and adjust it to make sure that you're maximizing the benefit that you hope to see further down the line. Okay, let's jump into the second issue we'll be talking about today. And this issue is of particular importance. I think this issue kills a lot of wealth in society today. And that issue is trying to keep up with your friends, with your family, with the latest social influencer that you follow on whatever social media platform you use. Trying to keep up with these individuals who are portraying a lifestyle that may or may not align with your long-term financial goals is a very dangerous game to play. In particular, on social media, these people will portray great wealth, great riches. They'll have access to fancy homes, fancy cars, the latest and greatest in technology. And the truth is, well, they may own these things, and they may own them with a great financial plan behind them, great savings, great investments. But oftentimes, and most of the time in my experience, these people can't afford these items either. They're putting on a show. And this show has a great impact on you as you watch these different videos and different reels. You feel like, well, I work hard. I should have these things too. At this point, I want you to ask yourself, does this particular decision, would pursuing this car or this type of house align with my personal long-term financial goals? Would the decision help enable my growth and prosperity in the future, my efforts to buy financial freedom so that I can free up time to do things that I love? Or will it set me back, all in an effort to try to create an image around yourself that doesn't align with who you are as a person or your core values? A very dangerous precedent. What I see just as often, but I think is probably less impactful because we tend to have more honest and open relationships with our friends and our family, but this can happen easily with friends and family as well. If we have a sibling that we're trying to compete with, they buy a new house after getting a new job, we might feel the pressure to get a new house. We see how our parents did as an example, and we feel like we need to follow in those footsteps. They bought new houses and they bought new cars. Well, first, their financial system and experience may be very different. What they have and the resources available to them might be very different. They might not be different, and they may be highly leveraged, taking on a lot of debt in order to provide for these things. There's always a cost for these decisions. Unless you have the cash and you can just pay for these things, there's always a cost. And one of the main costs here is working constantly to try to afford these items that are meant to bring happiness, luxury, and enhance leisure in our lives. If they're actually, in fact, doing the exact opposite by requiring you to work many, many more hours just to keep up, well, that to me is not financial independence. That to me is not happiness in life. It may be to you if that perception of yourself is as important as it would need to be in order to try to afford those things. But in the long run, you run the risk of having a conflict, a big conflict between the person that you really want to be, the core values that you hold, and the person that you're trying to present as to others around you, your neighbors, your family, your friends. In the long run, living within your means is the best possible solution here. Only buy what you need. Only buy what truly, deeply gives you a sense of satisfaction, makes you happier from day to day, and gives you something in your life that you feel is greater than the value of that money growing, compounding over time. Oftentimes, this comes down to a simple equation. Do I want to have this thing now in order to look a certain way and then struggle for years and years and years to try to pay off the interest that it accrues by having this item, a car, a house? Or would I rather sacrifice now, drive the older vehicle, keep the smaller house that's a bit older, or continue renting for that matter? Renting is an excellent approach to creating long-term savings and wealth, assuming that you are doing something with the additional money that you're accumulating by creating investments. And so I challenge you to think a bit more about why you are making certain decisions in your life. Why are you buying this product? Why are you buying this particular car? What is the minimum that you can live with that falls within your means, that doesn't sacrifice safety, for instance, when it comes to buying a car, or doesn't sacrifice anything that might affect your family long term if you have children? I know school districts can be important, so buying a house that gets you into those areas might be a bit more challenging. But try to remember that a lot of people live with a lot less, and making less work for you often is a great way to save money and to create a simple, stress-free financial situation for you and your family in the long term. Okay, so let's jump on to our final issue of wealth killing. This one is a huge issue that requires likely lots of time and lots of discussion, but let's get right into it. It is mismanagement of consumer debt. There's a lot of misunderstanding about debt. What's good debt? What's bad debt? Are there any forms of good debt? Is it okay to have any kind of debt? Well, let's get into some of the differences and the different types of debt that you might have or that you might be considering taking on. First off, there's consumer debt. This is debt that you take on typically on a credit card. It offers a very high interest rate, usually in the 20% range. And this is money that you put on a card, you buy products with the promise of paying back that amount at a certain rate, a certain interest rate. The problem here is that people often just make minimum payments on these cards each month. If you're just making the minimum payment, then the interest that you're accruing is greatly outpacing the amount that you owe. So you may pay minimum payments for 1-2 years on a $1,000 credit card and find that your balance isn't going down, it's actually going up. Well, this is a very dangerous predicament to be in. There are approaches to managing credit cards, and people do this for lots of reasons. A lot of people are convinced that miles, reward points that they get for using a card, or even cash back is something that makes a lot of sense. People who succeed in this game are paying off their credit card, their entire balance every month. They're zeroing that balance and making sure that they're not accruing any interest. At the very least, if not the full amount, because bills sometimes push into the next month and accrue some additional costs. You have to pay your last month's full balance. And so this is often just a slightly less amount than would show as your full balance on your card. This is definitely an approach. It's one that if you aren't very confident you'll have the money to pay off every month, it's one that makes no sense. So being cognizant of the consumer debt that you take on and making sure that you can pay it off in full every month is absolutely essential to maintaining wealth. If you do get caught in a cycle of high interest rate payments, paying the minimum, you will snowball that debt into a much larger amount and it will quickly become unmanageable. Let's talk about some other forms of debt. There's also student debt. This is a controversial topic at best and one that deserves a lot of time and attention. When I was growing up and going through school, I think the cost of tuition was likely much less than it is today. Although relatively speaking, in nominal terms, it's probably somewhat similar. But the decision here around student debt is a complex one. It's not as simple as saying for a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or a PhD, you should always take out student loans because this is an investment in your future and you will be making enough money to cover that debt in the future. This is not an easy answer. There's no one answer here. I think people often assume that education leads to higher paying jobs, which in principle it does, but not in all cases. There are lots of degrees that do not result in high paying jobs at the end. And so as you consider taking on debt for education, make sure that the end result, at the end of that education, the job that you'll be able to get is one that can furnish your debt. Over time, this is very important. For lots of positions, there are debt payment programs, employers that will take on your debt for you if you can contribute a certain number of years to the organization. This can be a very attractive thing to do. The military is certainly one option that provides this type of a structure. And so if you're interested in that lifestyle, that's a great choice. But think long and hard about the type of degree that you get, the average paying salary that results from that degree, and whether or not the amount of funding you're taking out to get that degree will ultimately pay for itself in time. If the answer is yes, fantastic. If the answer is no, then think twice about that. It doesn't mean that you can't follow your dreams and pursue that education, but maybe think about doing it in a different way. Community colleges can offer much reduced forms of tuition, which can be transferred into state schools. Thinking about staying in your home state for college is another approach to this and can be very beneficial. I know you probably want to get as far away as you can from your parents, or maybe you don't and you love your parents and your family is a very secure place for you. Excellent. Stay at home. Pay in-state tuition rather than paying out-of-state tuition and reduce that amount of debt long term. Let's talk about one other form of debt. This is debt that you take on to buy a home, a mortgage. This is definitely debt, and a lot of people have argued over the years that this is good debt, debt that will in time pay itself off. Well, yes and no. I think this is a much more complicated decision. When you're looking at buying a home, there are many different factors that you need to consider that many people don't consider, such as the maintenance costs of the home, the actual cost of having a house, paying for insurance, paying for any other type of expense that might surprise you along the way, can be pretty substantial. And that number is not usually the number you're thinking about when you're looking at what would be my mortgage payment each month. It doesn't often consider all of these other things. And so be very careful when you're looking at purchasing a home and taking on debt. Another argument that's really common in this space is, well, if I buy a house, this will be a great investment. Real estate always goes up. It always appreciates over time. I think historically, the answer to that question is yes, it does appreciate over time. But like any other investment, this market, the real estate market, is cyclical. It does go up and it does go down. A house is not a very liquid asset. It takes time to sell it, and you might find yourself in a position where you have to sell a home in a down cycle. And because these cycles in real estate tend to last longer periods of time, months, if not years, this can put you in a really bad position. In addition, I think that a simple argument for index funds that track the entire stock market would show a result of a 7 to 8% return annually per year on a conservative basis. Taking that investment that you would put in a house and putting it into that kind of a low maintenance investment, let's say VTSAX, which is Vanguard's version of a total stock index, this might be a much more attractive solution if you're looking for an investment. It comes with no debt, no consumer debt tied to a mortgage. It also typically yields very similar growth over time and often better growth over time. It also includes all of your expenses. You're not paying for insurance. You're not paying for repairs if your air conditioning goes out. So don't just assume that taking on debt to buy a house is a good thing. Okay, so we've discussed debt. We've discussed different approaches to debt. I think the most important thing is that you manage the type of debt that you take on. You understand the implications of each different category of debt. You know how you're going to pay off that debt to ensure that you're not paying additional penalties over time that can be completely unmanageable and can get grossly out of control, impacting your long-term future and your finances. And in particular, just making good decisions about the type of debt that you take on, I think can be a profound and meaningful, impactful set of decisions throughout your life. That is it. That is all we're talking about today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.